All right, everyone.
Because
Welcome
we
to
fancy
the
like
halftime show
Applebee's on a
report
date
as
night. Got the
we get to
Oreo
go
shake,
over a
and
lot
a
of the
whipped
action that
cream
we just
shake,
saw in
and a
the first
whipped
half.
cream on.
It's
And
very
a whipped
difficult.
cream's not too hot.
Nate Burleson, I can't hear you
Like
at all. It looks
Applebee's
like
on
Boomer
a
or
date night.
Sison's trying to
And
talk and tell us something.
Alabama
Boomer,
lemon,
just
my dick
talking to
in
your
the
mic.
light.
I'm sure the
That's
audience at
how we
home
do,
can
how we
definitely
do.
hear.
Fancy
This
like,
isn't distracting at all, and we're just
fancy like.
moving right along. I'm glad that our producers didn't think ahead about the fact that a halftime show
I couldn't believe it.
would be playing.
Couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they didn't just go to commercial and say, all right, well, let's try this again after the fancy like Walker Hayes song. It was
if anyone didn't get to watch any of the halftime shows,
my God.
You missed out. I mean, it was a gem. It was basically exactly like what we just had right there. I mean, it was literally they were trying to talk about the first half action, and Boomer was trying to like respond to his colleagues that are right next to him.
It was so loud.
No one could hear anybody because it's the halftime show just blasting.
The Walker Hayes fancy like halftime show. And the best part was they just, I think that the guys on the set kept thinking like, oh, okay, well, they're going to eventually just say like, go to commercial. But they didn't. Right. They kept like kind of like awkwardly like, I guess I'll keep going with my point, even though you can't hear you. And if you were in the stadium in Arrowhead, you would have had no idea. Like this was, you're just watching you were just watching the Walker Hayes the show. Like you had no idea. But on TV, it was one of those things that was so awkward, so funny, and it just was. You felt so bad for those guys, and it was talk about a blunder. Talk about just like an absolute brutal moment for the CBS broadcasting team.
Not an ideal way to run the production there. That is definitely not something clearly that they anticipated. I was at work and we had, the TV on in the background and the audio going. And so it was, I noticed it because it was interrupting like my, listening to the game and so I was like, wait, do we have something weird where, sometimes you have the background audio up too high? And I was like, no, this is just them.
It's the national broadcast. So, are you a CBS affiliate or are you?
We are. Yeah.
We're okay. Well,
yeah.
Listen, you got to make
that
a
was
call.
On our channel.
Make a call.
But, I mean, we couldn't do anything. It's not our call. I swear, please don't call our station.
Send your angry tweets to @Dan Vasco.
Yeah. Definitely. I can take care of all of those. But that was certainly one of the funnier moments in an otherwise once again entertaining weekend, championship weekend this time around of the NFL. So welcome everyone to the Football Lounge on what is going to be our second to last game recap of the year. Of course, we have the Super Bowl coming up in a couple weeks. I don't think we're going to be doing too much of a breakdown of the Pro Bowl. I'm just going to guess that we're not going to be going too in depth with all of that next week.
I am excited. I think there's going to be more of the big time players showing up to the Pro Bowl this year because it's in Vegas. Like, you saw them show up to Hawaii because I think they all appreciate, again, their family, the free trip to Hawaii. Orlando, the past couple of years, it's been like cold, rainy. It has not been like, I guess you could sell the family and we're going to Disney World if you got the kids. But I think a lot of the guys, the players are going to appreciate, hey, the free trip to Vegas with the wife, leave the kids at home for the weekend. And the single guys for sure are definitely going to be showing up to the Pro Bowl. Enjoying it. You think Tom Brady will be there?
I'm going to go ahead and guess no.
Well, you put some great numbers and then retires after the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. Play his final game in the Pro Bowl. Throw 8 touchdowns or something.
Him and Gronk both just go light up the Pro Bowl and then retire.
Yeah, so much, man. I mean, that obviously the Tom Brady news coming down was just one of the several things that kind of broke out this week.
Crazy weekend.
Us, it's more like, pick and choose. So basically how we're going to go through the show today, since we have so many of these items to touch on, is we'll, of course, break down the action from this championship weekend, kind of discuss the games a little bit. Then we'll get into, some of those breaking elements, a couple retirements being announced, and then head coach hirings as well as GM hirings across the league, as well as we kind of get some traction on that front with most teams being out of contention at this point of the year. So a lot to touch on, obviously, today. So we'll try and make this as fluid as possible. But before we get into it, Mark, I do want to say, since we'll be diving into the 49ers Rams game, as well as the Bengals and the Chiefs, Robbie Gould, man, has been a gem, obviously, for Bears fans.
Right. Yeah.
For many years, and you root for success, even though the Bears let him go unwisely several years ago. He's obviously been a pivotal part of their team's success. But if you guys haven't kind of checked out some people on Twitter, particularly, because I don't think the broadcasts have mentioned this much, at least from what I've seen. But Robbie has a very specific way he goes about doing his kicks, his practice kicks in before the game, and he doesn't care at all. The guy gives no fucks about where he's kicking and what time he's doing it. It started, at least on my radar, for the Green Bay game in Lambeau, where he was doing the initial kick. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
So the first one was actually at the Cowboys game, and it was in between. It was like he was stuck in between two rows of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. It's always right before the game and right before the start of the second half. He's out there religiously, and he has his method of doing things. And normally it's not really a big deal, but during these playoff games, there's extra things at halftime. There's more stuff going on. And so it keeps getting noticed before the game and during. But the first one was at the Cowboys game. He was stuck in between rows of cheerleaders trying to get his kicks off. And he just does. He's like, listen, I'm getting my kicks. You got to work around me here.
Yeah. And then
Green Bay was
turned me onto it was the Green Bay one, because they're introducing the team, and the whole team is running out onto the field, and he's kicking over the players as they're running, being introduced.
Yeah.
Gold for Gould. He did it once again this past week with the Rams, only this time it was like the defense like trotting out, or maybe it was the group of captains or something.
Yeah.
It's a group of like 8 players out there, and he's just kicking right in front of them. Like,
Joe and Troy did make a mention of it during the broadcast last night, because it started catching as one of those viral things. Robbie Gould, what I loved the most was that after he made that kick against Green Bay and it went viral, we didn't talk about it last week's show because it started going viral in the middle of last week. There's audio of Jimmy G, who grew up in Arlington Heights outside of Chicago as a Bears fan. Who and obviously Robbie Gould, he grew up watching Robbie Gould kick for the Chicago Bears, and was very much so, still has that kind of hatred for the Packers. And, you kind of hear this from guys in the league, who sometimes end up playing for a team that they either rooted for or end up playing for a team that they despised. When they're on the team, it's different. Like they're not going to purposely sabotage. And then they find a love for that because, hey, the paychecks, and you want to win football games or whatever it may be. But Jimmy G went up to Robbie Gould and was like, "You're a legend, man. Like, fuck the Packers." Like once always hating the Packers, always hating the Packers. And I thought that was a really fun moment between those two guys. And you know what? I got to be honest. We said on the show last week, I'm not sad to see the Niners run end. But Robbie Gould was one of those really great storylines of the postseason. He's still, to my knowledge, perfect in postseason play in his career. And just another great example of why Ryan Pace deserves to be not working as a general manager in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I know that they're not the biggest impact players, but just kind of imagine maybe where the Bears would have been had they kept Greg Olsen and Robbie Gould. Like,
well, those are
obviously Greg Olsen was years earlier, but you don't have the double doink. Maybe Olsen and Cutler end up having a really, really good, relationship together for years. And it's just fun stuff to think about.
Greg Olsen is the epitome of an NFL that no longer exists, in the sense that move from the Bears. That was still when coaching was about, you hired an offensive guy purely for their scheme, and they literally traded Greg Olsen, even though he was one of the best young tight ends in the league, because, Mike Martz's offense doesn't use tight ends, so who cares?
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to you could line Greg Olsen up as a wide receiver, and he was like Travis Kelce before Travis Kelce, the way, especially early in his career, the way he ran routes and burned people at the U. coming out of Miami. No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's funny. And I mean, every fan who's a team of bad franchises, you just know there's every franchise has moments and players and coaches that got away. The Washington football team knows more than anyone. They will forever show the graphic of Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? You just always, when you're a bad organization, you have to live with stuff like that, and the Bears do. And we'll talk more about the Bears obviously later in the show with Eberflus and yes, our Twitter followers making fun of me because I talked about how it's going to probably be Matt Eberflus. I'm going to be pissed, and I'm not pissed, but I'll explain all that later in the show.
For sure. Yeah. By the way, one of those that got away, Johnny Unitas, was cut by the Steelers.
So yeah.
There's that. Yeah. So let's get into it, Mark. Obviously, an exciting weekend to determine Super Bowl 53, and here we have ourselves. Or no, 53. My goodness,
56.
Good Lord. And it was the Cincinnati Bengals, one of those teams that probably shocked the world for being in the AFC Championship. Now, granted, the 49ers were a lower seed as well, but I don't think people were as surprised that they were in the position they were in.
Yeah.
Cincinnati was like the Cinderella team of this postseason run, coming up into a, dogfight with the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead, all of the surrounding things. I mean, you and I obviously picked Kansas City to win this game. I picked them to win by double digits. I thought it would be close early, and then Kansas City would pull away and not really make it much of a contest. But in reality, Mark, what we got was Mahomes again. That was something we've seen, early this year and in pockets where he goes through these waves in game where he'll be really sharp for 2 quarters and, teams adjust, and yet the Chiefs aren't adjusting with that. And Mahomes makes 1 or 2 mistakes there. I don't mean to put it all on him, but in my opinion, Mark, this is mostly on Mahomes. And I'll describe kind of one other huge issue I had with them. But to me, Mahomes kind of blew it. And that interception to the defensive lineman in the second half there, to me, was the, one of the most pivotal plays of the game, if not the most pivotal play.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's weird to say, but I do think it's accurate in saying that Patrick Mahomes was a large problem in this game. And, Patrick Mahomes has been an incredible story. This is his 5th year in the league, 4th year of the Chiefs in a row as a starter. He started 4 years after sitting his whole rookie year behind Alex Smith. And every year he's got the Chiefs to host the AFC Championship game. And this was the first time. And this was the first time in any of these big games, playoff games, or big regular season games that were really meaningful to for playoff positioning, Super Bowls, where you can honestly say he did not play well. He did not play well, and he was at fault. Part of the reason why the team did not win the game. You can't criticize Patrick Mahomes. I've been saying it all morning. I live here right on the Missouri border, and this is you're closer to St. Louis, but ever since the Rams left, this has really become Chiefs country. My station, actually, 97.9 Kick FM, we are the radio home in this whole market for the Chiefs. Chiefs are huge here. And I've had it, it's been fun moving down here almost 3 years ago at the rise of Patrick Mahomes. It's been painful as a Bears fan because it's that, the Bears could have Patrick Mahomes, Mitchell Trubisky thing. But we've been treated to a guy that just in the moments, the big moments, has always played well. That Super Bowl last year, you cannot blame Mahomes. We all know he was asked to do what, he was asked to try to perform miracles in that Super Bowl last year in Tampa against a world-class defensive line with a completely rebuilt in last minute backup offensive line. I mean, it was a disaster for him, and the numbers showed. But I think you're absolutely right in saying that we've seen it in pockets, but this is the first time in the big game with the lights bright that you can honestly say, and you're not being overly critical, Patrick Mahomes was one of the reasons why they lost this game. He did not play well from really the end of the first half on, with that bad decision making late in the second quarter in the goal line stand. I love the call to go for it, to try to score the touchdown. hated the play call and hated the decision. A lot of people locally here in the area, hardcore Chiefs fans, like, well, don't blame Patrick. A lot of it was bad play calling in the second half. Well, listen, do we blame Josh McDaniels when Brady would struggle at the end of his career or even the middle of his career in New England? No. When you're that good and you're considered the best quarterback in the league, and we were praising Patrick and Travis Kelce for doing the whole go Kels thing against the Bills, that's on him to know this is a bad play call. I need to get my team into the right position. Peyton Manning is a Hall of Famer and one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, in my opinion, because after that second or third year in the league, he then became the best quarterback of all time at saying, no. We need to be doing this. I don't care what the play call is. Do this. Patrick Mahomes has done it in the past. We've seen him do it. And that didn't happen in the second half against the Bengals team that adjusted. The Bengals defense deserves a ton of credit. They really did play well. But overall, Patrick Mahomes was tight. He was inaccurate. He made bad decisions in the second half. And he deserves criticism from his own fan base and from us on the way he played in this game. Now, that doesn't mean that he's still not – he would still be number 1 overall on my board of quarterbacks that I would take in a fantasy draft of hey, you're building your team right now of all the players available. He still has earned that right to be at the top of that podium. But I think the gap is starting to shorten, too, between some guys in his own conference especially.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that front. And that's just what comes with the territory, man. When you're this good, you're going to get praised a lot of times, and you're going to have to, weather the storm. He's one of those guys that's been really good at the mic and a leader. So I'm, not surprised in any, mature handling of the situation. He'll take it on the chin and he'll move forward, and they'll find a way to be better. But the thing is, there's a pocket of time as well to kind of capitalize and take advantage. This has been talked about since, Mahomes became, the next, huge thing, was that time's going to run out, money's going to run out eventually for this team. And so Travis Kelce's not getting any younger. Tyreek Hill, he might be around for a little while longer, but they're going to have to, find ways. They've done a lot of patchwork with their offensive line. Now, they drafted well last year on that front, so maybe that'll give them kind of help extend this window. But that's the thing. I mean, when you got a quarterback as good as him and $500 million quarterback, money's tied up in a lot of other places. You're paying one of the best receivers in the league. You're paying the best tight end. So in that regard, this is a huge letdown for the Chiefs. I mean, this was the chance to once again get back and get your second Super Bowl. Show people that it wasn't a fluke or whatever. But the fact that they still got to 2. And like you said, 4 championship games in a row, that's impressive. And so you kind of have to take the good with the bad. It's an impressive run. It's great that they got there, but much like the Bills of the 90s, it's like, hey, your job was to get it done, and you didn't get it done. So we'll see if they're able to respond. The good news for them, I guess, is that they still are the top dogs in the AFC West. They still have a string hole on the division. So, for the time being, it looks like they'll be just fine. But, to your point about crediting the Bengals, obviously that defensive front has been really good. That play where Von Bell was able to get the interception in overtime. Was it Eli Apple that made that play? I'm trying to remember who the corner was.
Yeah, well, I mean, and Mahomes almost threw the pick 6 on the first play of that drive. Yeah, I mean, it was, and again, that was more, Mahomes' fault versus the last one. The second one, the interception was a great play. The actual interception. Before I talk about the Bengals and them winning this game, my final thing is, and I said it in our Facebook Live preview, and I wanted to focus on it here a little bit. You started to touch on it. The legacy for the Kansas City Chiefs. Listen, I can only dream, and every fan of any NFL team should dream and hope that your team is in 4 conference championship games in a row.
Absolutely.
That is a luxury that does not happen to other teams except for right now. Like the New England Patriots are the only ones that can say we have any sort of recent history like that. The only thing that comes close to it were Andy Reid's Eagles from the early 2000s. But even that, you're talking about almost 20 years ago now to get back to. It's an incredible run. But again, it becomes a pressure talk thing. And you have to look at it and say, 4 championship games, 2 Super Bowl appearances, 1 win. You know, you can't take anything for granted. And with how tough this AFC is getting, it's going to be really fascinating to see, you know, to have perspective on this. In 10 years, we look back and be like, Mahomes never went back to another AFC championship game. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that'll happen. But if it does happen, you will look back at this stretch and go, you know what? For the talent they had, the way things panned out, they shot themselves in the foot that first AFC championship game with the penalty that gave Brady the extended drive, and then the Patriots win. They won their Super Bowl against the Niners fair and square in a great game, and Mahomes was terrific late. Deserve all the credit in the world for that game. They lost that second Super Bowl appearance. You know what? Injuries are a part of the game. It happens. If they were healthy, I don't even know if they win that one because of how good that Tampa team was and, you know, playing at home. And with this one, this is the first one of those 3 where you say to yourself, you mean it wasn't a penalty, it wasn't injuries. They didn't make it to the Super Bowl this year because of I think, a combination of bad play calling and their quarterback not rising to the occasion when historically he has. Now, he's allowed to have one of those. Now, we'll see, is his legacy start to get defined by this, or does Patrick Mahomes have the ability to overcome it to once again get back on top of the mountain of the AFC and say, Joe Burrow, whoever, Josh Allen, whoever, Lamar Jackson, whoever, Justin Herbert, whoever, this is my conference. It's going to be fascinating to watch, in a perspective on it. But I also am very excited to see, we talk a lot about this with Aaron Rodgers over the last couple of years. Oh man, Aaron Rodgers is going to go scorched earth. Yeah, you're going to have a motivated Aaron Rodgers. What does a really motivated Patrick Mahomes look like? Part of me thinks that Mahomes maybe last offseason, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they, after the slow start, they kept saying all offseason, listen, we just got to fix our tackles. We'll be fine. They did. Maybe they weren't as motivated and as hungry, and they came into the season, they started off slow, and things were choppy. And then they got going. But what will this offseason look like? I mean, he's heard a ton of talk about his family, a ton of talk about his, being a dad affect Patrick Mahomes? What was it? A motivated, kind of frustrated Patrick Mahomes where he can look in the mirror and say, it was me that didn't play well enough to get it done for my team. That's going to be really fascinating to see into next year. So it's certainly a storyline to look after. I don't think it's a legacy-defining game for Mahomes, but it certainly hurts his legacy because he has now put himself in the conversation of, like Russell Wilson, like Aaron Rodgers, like Tom Brady, as he's still currently technically playing, of the few quarterbacks where it's like, it's just Super Bowl or bust. And that's it. That's your legacy now, is just Super Bowl or bust. He's in that rare group that, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees, and Ben Roethlisberger were in, but now they're all gone, where that's what they're in. It's
that's
not
what I was going to say is, like, to your point about that legacy, if you would have told any of us in 2011 that Aaron Rodgers and Big Ben are never getting back to the Super Bowl in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
You would have thought you're nuts. You're like, well, they're going to make it one time at least.
Each one of them, yeah.
And the Steelers, they're only made one AFC championship in that time. Aaron at least got close a few times.
He's hosted it, yeah.
But,
you're absolutely right.
It goes to show how freaking difficult it is to get back. I mean, that's what makes Tom Brady's legacy so incredible.
Yes.
Is that he did keep getting back. And it's like, that is the greatest of the greats couldn't do it. I mean, it's so hard. So yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that as great as Mahomes is, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could not get back.
Now for the Bengals, I want to say this. I think there was a couple things that were just so fascinating in this game. As much as we talk about the defense really stepped up and they played incredible in the second half, I don't even care if Mahomes was off and that was Mahomes' fault. If you're a defense that holds the Chiefs to 3 points in the second half, you deserve credit because whether it was also, I think Mahomes was a part of the reason why they struggled, but the defense, they did show different looks in the second half. They stopped giving up the Kelsey plays, those easy middle of the field chunk plays. They really clamped down. They got after Mahomes. They made it more difficult on him. There was a couple times where Mahomes started doing that running around magic thing, and then he had that one fumble one at midfield. He had a couple plays where the defense made it really difficult on him, and they deserve a lot of credit. But Joe Burrow had 2 incredible third down run scrambles. The one where he kind of high stepped, the one he posted on his social media today, getting out of the grab of Chris Jones, an incredible field awareness to know he had to do that little hitch step as Jones was swiping at the feet. That's something I wish Justin Fields would learn, because Justin Fields got caught so many times from behind this year, not because he's not fast. He's super fast, but just that awareness of where are those guys on the field around you, helping them make that extra thing to make them miss. Joe Burrow has that. He was electric in those moments. They shut down Jamar Chase. He found T. Higgins. They both they lost their tight end. The Rams lost their tight end in this game. They found other weapons. Joe Mixon, they stuck to the running game. Joe Mixon had just enough, couple big chunk plays. I mean, credit to the Cincinnati offense. They were down 21-3. They were the team that scored 24 points to 3 points, from midway through the second quarter to the end of the game. They were the offense that did that, and they deserve credit for that just as much as their defense deserves credit for taking down and clamping down on Mahomes. I thought Joe Burrow was great. I thought Zach Taylor never panicked. And you know what? There's something about that rookie kicker, McPherson. It's a cocky, not like Baker Mayfield cocky, but there's an arrogance and a cockiness, but it's not flashy. I don't know what it is, but that Bengals team, they just relax, they chill. And this is a weird Bengals team. Remember, they lost to my Bears. They lost to the Jets in this season, but they have found something midway through the season and they've turned it on, and they're riding a wave right now. And that is one of the reasons why they have a legitimate chance to go into LA to take on the Rams and win the Super Bowl. Well, I know we'll talk about that, and we're not getting into it now, but man, oh man, how can you not feel that Cincy has legitimate chance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've overcome odds all throughout this playoff run, and really throughout the season too. I mean, winning the divisions, and most people didn't pick them to win the AFC North. Most people picked them to take 4th in the AFC North this year. So for them to win the division, that was impressive. Then to go on the road, for multiple games and win those en route to a Super Bowl, it's impressive. Their first Super Bowl since 1987. They went to 2 in the 80s, never got back. And haven't won one yet either. So there's a lot of, history to be written for Cincinnati. And I mean, we were talking about it even after that first playoff win, that this has been a huge victory for the Bengals, even if they lost in the divisional round. We're like, they won the division and then won a playoff game with a second-year quarterback and a rookie wide receiver and a bad offensive line. I mean, there's so much that's been impressive about this run from this team. And it pains me to say it because they're a bitter rival, but you can't help but, just respect the journey that they've taken. And, Zach Taylor's got to feel a lot of validation right now because there are a lot of question marks about him early. They're just 2 years removed from being the worst team in the league.
It's crazy.
So it's wild that they find themselves here. To your point about McPherson, Field Yates tweeted out yesterday, McPherson's made 12 field goals of 50-plus yards. That's the most by a kicker in a single season ever. And he did this as a rookie. I mean, we all know how difficult it is to make your mark as a rookie in the league, period. But a rookie kicker, extremely difficult because of the heightened weight of the moment that kickers are under.
And he's not doing it in the dome. He's not like in the he's not like on the Colts and you play in the AFC South where it's like 2 games in Indy, 2 games in Houston, a game in Jacksonville where the weather's going to be nice. A game in Tennessee where it's not bad. I mean, since he's a bad weather city, it's a Pittsburgh, it's a Midwest, crazy winds, weather, Cleveland, Cincinnati. I mean, it is impressive. There's a cockiness to it. Congrats to the Bengals. I have strong thoughts on this game already, but we'll save that for later. And for my final point for the Chiefs is I expect the Chiefs to be back and to be competitive and to be right at top of the AFC next year. But I do think this is a stretch that Patrick Mahomes has to overcome now a little bit extra. We talked about it when he lost the Super Bowl. He had a chance to beat Brady and to really put the pressure on it. Holy crap. is Patrick Mahomes going to actually really challenge Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time? Now he's got to honestly battle that feeling of Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers of, okay, he's really talented, but this is a lot like Russell Wilson now. You win your first, you lose your second, and now you're just not getting it. What's going to happen? Like, he now it's a different echelon, still a Hall of Fame talent, beginning of a Hall of Fame career, but now the narrative is a little different for the legacy. He's got plenty of time to overcome it. But as we've pointed out, with Big Ben and Aaron Rodgers, all these people, with Russell Wilson, got to do it. You got to get back there. You got to do it.
Anything can happen. And you're in a division that's getting better. It's not getting worse as of right now. Like, the Steelers had a decade to own it, other than the Ravens. Like, the Ravens were in their way, but the Bengals and Browns were terrible. It's like Pittsburgh had no excuse to not get back. You got Denver with a new coach. Like, we'll see if they get the quarterback right, or if they get, an Aaron Rodgers or something, then they're instantly, we would say, in contention. The Raiders, kind of a similar situation.
New coach.
We'll talk about those hirings, but you got a young head coach and a very young, super talented quarterback in Herbert in the division as well. I mean, a lot can happen. You have a lot of obstacles in your way if you're Mahomes now. It's like the target's still on your back, but
your own salary cap is going to be an obstacle. You know what I mean? Your own salary cap is going to be an obstacle. Yeah. All right, let's move on. But it's fascinating.
Definitely. I will say real quick though about I really hated the call at the end of the half by the Chiefs in the red zone to not take a throw into the end zone. You do a screen pass behind the sticks and let the clock run out. You don't even take a field goal. Game could have, it could have been a 3-point win for them at the end of the day.
It's simple. We love the aggression to go for it. Hate the call. That's it. You don't even have to explain it further. Take a shot, and then worst thing happens is incomplete. You have 1 second left. Trot out the field goal. No one blames you. But the way and Mahomes, I think he was just not right ever since after that play. And, he's got to find a way to overcome that, and he's talented enough to do it. So we should be critical on him for it.
I believe it's the second biggest playoff comeback in history. The Bengals were down 21-3 at one point in this game and come back to win it 27-24.
Colts,
Impressive stuff there.
Colts Patriots was the other one, the AFC Championship, when the Colts finally overcame the hump. Remember, there was that big 4th and 2 stop, and Bill Belichick, and then Peyton Manning.
It was the tackle. It was a throw to the flat, right?
He didn't want to give it back to Peyton Manning, and Peyton Manning got the ball back. They went on to beat my Bears.
Reggie Wayne caught the bobbled pass, right?
Yep.
On that ensuing drive.
That was Peyton's breakthrough to get to the Super Bowl.
Yep. Wild stuff there. Obviously, 28-3 in the Super Bowl for the Patriots, being the other. But this one specific to just the playoffs, not the postseason, because I guess Super Bowl is considered postseason. Playoffs are the others. Before we get into this other one, Mark, we got to talk about this. KMBC, they are getting roasted, and rightfully so.
Local TV station,
local Missouri TV station in Kansas City, tweeted out after the game.
It's so good.
This is our bold strategy of the week because, I just don't see how this worked out for them very good. But I'm going to read you the post that they had. They included a picture. I'll read the picture as well. But the post says, "Against all odds," in all caps, "we were never supposed to be here. We were never meant to make it this far, but against all odds, we did. What a season. Thank you for the incredible ride. We will always be Chiefs Kingdom."
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Incredible. Like, I was
they got roasted.
When I saw it, I was like, what?
They got roasted. They got roasted. They deserve to get roasted. I get the intention. I get the whole, we just want to support our guys. But when you literally are the favorites all season long, even when they were 3-4, they were still, I think, like 4th best odds to win the Super Bowl. Still the best to win their division, like in Vegas. Like, you just can't. You have to have someone in their sports department had to be more self-aware to be like, okay, can we make sure we check it with the sports guys before we tweet out whatever the hell we're going to tweet out? To me, conversely, I thought, I mean, obviously it's bad. They deserve to get roasted. The funny thing to me was, and I tweeted out, what a great job right now it is to be the Bengals Twitter guy. If you're the person in charge of the Bengals Twitter, you have seen it all. You've had to deal with rough times. And now you're sitting there watching the Bengals and you actually get to tweet, we're going to the Super Bowl. That must be like a surreal, like a trip for that guy, the social media people for the Bengals. That is a surreal moment. And the Chiefs,
especially with like Joe Cool leading the way. I mean, he writes itself almost.
He makes it easy.
Storyline.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's a shoo-in. So yeah, KMBC. I get the. They were obviously is what I think is they're one of two things. They were either doing this on purpose, knowing how silly it was, just to get to one, throw support out there and to get traction, or they really thought that being, the 1-3 starter, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Thinking that far back that somehow like the first month of the season was like defining the rest of the year for the team. And somehow they, against all odds, they battled back. And as you mentioned, like even when they had a losing record still later, they were still favored, or at least in the among the best odds to go to the Super Bowl. So yeah. Pretty funny stuff. But yeah, if you haven't, go check out that tweet. Everyone's got it at this point. They've all. It's like they accidentally hacked the Bengals account. Like the Bengals were ready to tweet that in case the Bengals lost, and thought, we'll just put this over Arrowhead Stadium, and that'll be good just in case. And it's like, no. That was an intern who's going to get a big lashing too. What the hell are we doing? If they do end up making the Super Bowl in the coming years, we're going to be like, this is not going away. People are then going to say, if the Chiefs go 18-0 next year and get to the Super Bowl, or well, I guess it'd be actually 19-0, get to the Super Bowl, people are going to be like, against all odds, they did it. They did it. They were 19-0, but Twitter no one expected them to be here.
Twitter doesn't forget.
This is forever for sure. All right, let's get into the nightcap and the final game. NFC West showdown. The third meeting between the 49ers and the Rams this season. The 49ers got the best of the Rams to this point. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. But it's the Rams that come out on top. A really, it was a good game, Mark. Obviously, there was some sloppiness involved throughout. Skoranek dropped like a wide open touchdown. Jimmy G with, that, desperation play at the end. You can't fault him too much, but he's just trying to make something happen. I get it. But, just some weird things. Second half, the 49ers really just took Deebo Samuel out of the playbook. I think that was a huge factor. The guy who's been so dominant all season long had over 100 yards to that point, or just under 100 yards, I should say. I mean, he was a big factor in their success throughout the game. But nonetheless, it's the Rams that end up winning this one 20-17 by a field goal. Matt Stafford finally makes it to the Super Bowl. Another great game from Cooper Kupp. He had 11 catches, 142 yards.
He's phenomenal.
I mean, the guy's incredible. Your thoughts here on maybe why this was different this time around from the regular season, where the 49ers really seemed to have the Rams number?
Well, part of it, what was different is that, again, I just think we can talk about legacy. Kyle Shanahan in big moments in postseason play now, you have to question him. I mean, he was the architect behind 28-3 in the play calling with the Falcons. And now you've seen it in the they had that lead against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and they got tight, and they made mistakes in the fourth quarter that let Patrick Mahomes keep getting the ball back and keep scoring to get the Chiefs back into that game and beat them. And you saw it. I mean, the final three drives for the Niners, credit to the Rams defense. Aaron Donald and Von Miller and Leonard Floyd and that other guy, the white guy, I can't think of his name right now, Perrine or the D tackle.
I'm forgetting.
They kept going to him. They were phenomenal. I mean, they were so good, and they were just causing havoc, and they were stopping the run. But Kyle Shanahan's play calling, man, it was just bad. Again, you have a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and you lose the game. That is on your play calling. Your offense was bad in the fourth quarter. All you need to win that game at that point is at least one drive. You need one drive to eat up 5 to 6 minutes and a field goal. Like, that's it. And you put all the pressure on. And now, obviously, Tart drops. We wouldn't be talking about Shanahan as much if Tart actually makes the play off of the Matt Stafford heave. And listen, that's Matt Stafford to a T. We know it from being Bears fans, watching Stafford. He makes decisions like that sometimes. It's like he forgets sometimes that's not Calvin Johnson down there. He got really good at just doing that with Calvin Johnson, and Calvin Johnson became a Hall of Famer because of it. But that was a bad decision. But Stafford in the end and McVay in the end, they had the offense that kept drives alive. They got that Cooper Kupp touchdown when they needed that touchdown, and then 2 more field goals, and that's it. They win the game. And that, along with Aaron Donald and that defensive line stepping up and playing big in that fourth quarter, along with Kyle Shanahan's bad play calling, it just fell apart. And the Rams are so weird. The Rams are, the Niners. They are uniquely built over the last 3 seasons to have gotten to this point and to the Super Bowl. But they also have such a deficiency at times when it comes to, all right, now you need to, where's the dog, finish the game, wind it down. And I think part of that is on Shanahan, and I think the other part of it's on Jimmy G. I think it's a mix of both. He doesn't 100% trust Jimmy G, and he's right in doing so, but he doesn't 100% trust himself to call the run plays, to keep going to Deebo Samuel. I mean, the fact that they stopped going to Deebo Samuel is a crime enough, let alone they just didn't find the offensive rhythm. And this is a team that's built on creative offensive play calling. And even they got a little too cute at times. They did the Trent Williams thing in the backfield again and tried to then cut back the other way, as opposed to just call the play as it is. For me, Kyle Shanahan owns this loss. Patrick Mahomes owns the Chiefs loss. Shanahan owns the Niners loss. They crumbled. They had a 10-point lead. They didn't score. I don't even blame Jimmy G with the interception in the end. Okay, you had to do something. Now you're down. Desperation. But again, that's when you're in a bad spot against a Rams defensive line that is really good at what? Rushing the passer. And you let them then say, okay, you got to throw the ball now after your 2 really bad 3-and-out punt drives. Now on the Rams side of it, listen, like I kind of mentioned, I thought Stafford was great in the fourth quarter, minus the 1 Stafford throw, and Tart should have had the interception. But otherwise, him and Cooper Kupp were fantastic. The Rams, McVay, I thought, called a great fourth quarter. I thought the first half was very much like 2 championship fighters. They're feeling each other out. No one wanted to make the mistake. They wanted to keep it close. They knew they had to. And then late in the third, into the fourth, it was like, all right, pressure's on now. Who handles the pressure better? The Rams defensive line and Matt Stafford overall handled the pressure way better than Kyle Shanahan and the play calling from the Niners.
Yeah, totally agree. And I'll say, Matt Stafford mentioned it after the game. I mean, they won the line of scrimmage, and not in the conventional way of the term, in which they just dominated them, pounded the rock. No, but what they did do was completely stymie San Fran, and that's what you have to do. If you can make it so that San Fran doesn't win the line of scrimmage, doesn't mean you're necessarily winning. It's more neutral, but that's a win for you. If you can make the 49ers just neutral in that aspect of play, then you're likely going to win, because you have Stafford, you have explosive playmakers outside of the quarterback and or 1 wide receiver, a la Deebo Samuel. The 49ers rushed the ball 20 times, pretty low for that team.
Agreed.
What we've seen over the years. I think that was the biggest win, is they made them kind of adjust how they played, and they took them off of their game, while the Rams kind of seemed much more comfortable throughout the game with what they were doing. They didn't seem to panic very much. That was a big difference. And I think that defensive front that you mentioned is, what I think going into the next week's prediction segment is going to be a big thing in terms of how I'm viewing this matchup in the Super Bowl.
Agreed.
Because now we're talking about one of the best defensive lines in the playoffs against one of the worst offensive lines in the playoffs. So that should be an interesting narrative going into the Super Bowl. But nonetheless, I'm happy for Matt Stafford. I really am. And I know you, as a Bears fan, even over the years, you're like, you even agreed, like, he's a really likable guy.
Oh yeah.
Talented dude, fights hard. I'm happy for him. I'm glad he got there. It sucks that Robert Woods can't be playing in the game with them, but such is life. And OBJ, was
OBJ
the Browns
big
earlier this year, and he's been big to their success down the stretch.
OBJ was big in this game. You got to wait on the health of Higbee. And then what is the tight end for the Bengals? I can't think of his name.
CJ Uzama.
Uzama.
That didn't look too good.
They both could miss the starting tight ends. So that'll be a factor for the game. I agree. I feel great for Matt Stafford. My heart, this is, again, I don't want to get too much into the preview for the game, but I'll just say, to me, so much of when you get down to these last 4 games, championship weekend into the Super Bowl, these last 3 games, I should say, legacies are written and defined. And I'm going to focus big time on that and what it means for these legacies for both these quarterbacks and these organizations going into the Super Bowl. But I will say, to put a button on it, my thoughts on the NFC Championship game, Kyle Shanahan isn't going anywhere, and he's a great coach. But there is the narrative on Andy Reid for so long of his career before he won the big game was what? Time management. And he never managed time well. Well, he's kind of turned that around, and we don't talk about that as much. And as he's gotten older, and with Patrick Mahomes, it's not as much of a narrative. But the narrative on Kyle Shanahan right now is this dude is elite as his elite gets at designing plays, scheming, finding offensive coordinators, finding defensive coordinators, creating a culture. But good God, does he fold under the pressure of play calling in the fourth quarter? It's almost like someone has to take Kyle Shanahan and say, I need you to script the final 3 drives of the game like you script the first drive of the game. And then I don't care what happens in the game, just do those plays. Like, trust your brain, trust what got you there. And I don't see him keen to do it. Now, what's fascinating for the Niners going forward, and I know we'll talk about in the offseason, is this is why you drafted Trey Lance. And now is it Trey Lance going to be able to be that guy who you can say, you know what? Yeah, I'm comfortable. And with 2 minutes left, going 5 wide, spreading things out, and letting my big arm athlete quarterback make these plays, because you don't do that with Jimmy G. So now we'll see what this new version of the Niners look like going forward. And for Jimmy G, he certainly earned himself a starting job in the league next year, whether that's with San Francisco again, if they want to keep sitting Trey Lance, whether that is in Indianapolis. Hello, Indy, make the call, figure it out. A guy who you can manage the game, not turn the ball over, run the ball, great offensive line. In domes, wherever it may be, Jimmy G has certainly got himself a job next year.
Yeah, I agree. And, he's a guy that's won a lot of games. So you can't, at the end of the day, you have to factor that into account.
Yeah.
His play hasn't been spectacular, but he's a guy that can win football games, and that's valuable in the National Football League for sure.
George Kittle loves him as a locker room guy. And if Kittle's the type of guy that everyone would love in their locker room. So if he's vouching for Jimmy G in that way, and he really does stand behind him, then that alone should tell you that the guys in the locker room respect him. That he could galvanize. If you bring him in for a 2-year contract to kind of reset your franchise, whether it's with the Steelers, a football team, Colts, whatever it may be, and now he's dealt with the young quarterback coming in as well, that he can handle it and help you win games along the way.
Just guys being dudes, right? Yeah, that's Jimmy G for you right there. All right, Mark, let's kind of get into some of the news from this past week as we launch ourselves into this next week and get ready for next week's preview. Tom Brady announced his retirement, he didn't. I shouldn't say he announced his retirement.
And Darlington.
I should say Adam Schefter and Jeff Darlington announced his retirement. Look, I think at the end of the day, that and I think this is what most people are thinking at this point, is it was just the timing that Tom had issue with. And so I think what happened was, after their initial report came out, Tom had his PR team and his close inner circle of people, play down the reports so that he can own it. And I totally respect that, by the way.
I agree.
I think a guy that's done as much as he has earned the right to break his own retirement. But at the end of the day, I'm at this point fairly convinced that those reports are accurate, and he will be hanging up the cleats. So, your thoughts on just his retirement? I mean, we could do 5 episodes on
And
Tom
we will
Brady,
do
but
an episode this
I'm
summer
sure we
on
will.
Tom Brady. I'll say
Absolutely.
this in short, I'll say this. I completely agree. I'm sure the word started leaking to certain people like, hey, ESPN, get your tribute videos ready. Hey, you know what I mean? Like, this is coming. And you know what? But I'm sure it was part of that was like, do whatever you do, Tom has to own this news. And if you're Schefter and Darlington, those guys are big enough names so they feel like, you know what, I want to break the story. It's worth it to get my name out there for the branding. And but I agree with you. It's going to be on his social, his account, and it'll in the coming weeks will happen. Listen, my initial thoughts is when it does officially happen, Tom Brady, in my opinion, is the greatest football player of all time. He is the greatest team sport athlete with Michael Jordan of all time. Like, they are 1 and 1A. Put them either way, it doesn't matter to me. But team sport athletes, they are great. And a large part of it is they both come from that chip on the shoulder, humble beginnings. Now I get it. Jordan was drafted 2 overall, Brady end of it. But Jordan had that, not highly recruited, didn't start right away in high school. There's something that drives them beyond. Listen, I think Tom Brady, to me, if I had to build a Mount Rushmore of the 4 major sports in American, American society, baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, if you had to choose one athlete from each thing, he is the football player I put on that Mount Rushmore. It's just how I feel right now. And maybe someone makes a better argument for a Jerry Rice or a Jim Brown. I'd be willing to listen, but for me, he is that face I'd put on that Mount Rushmore. We already see it when I would talk about with Mahomes, how hard it is to do. Tom Brady's did in his career. And he is something special. And I think 100% the career is over. The timing, he just is going to want to own it. Like Big Ben released his own video before then everyone started running with the story. Tom wants that. I think he'll get that in that way. But it certainly was a little sullied from Shefty and Darlington.
Yeah, I think, if you had your like Jerry West, like you were saying, like the Jerry West silhouette for the NBA, if you had to have some sort of shadow silhouette, it's got to be Tom Brady there. Maybe it's him holding up the 4. Who knows?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But
against the Bears,
I 100% agree. The greatest of all time. I know a lot of people are throwing Lawrence Taylor in there, saying he's got to be the greatest football player ever. I don't see how you can make the comparison. He not only plays the most important position in the most highly touted sport,
and the most pressure-packed position in sports.
And the most required. Lawrence Taylor required physical abilities, and not to downplay, like, obviously he had to be a good study and know defense or offenses and their type of tendencies.
Agreed.
But the knowledge that Tom brought to the stadium day in and day out, I mean, he knew what the cornerback was supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's next level type of stuff. He transcended everything about what it means to play the sport and what it means to be an athlete in changing times. I mean, his ability to adapt over the years, but still maintain, like, he's the ultimate guy that could play 100 years ago and can probably play in whatever the league will look like 100 years from now.
Agreed.
And that's pretty impressive. I feel like few players can really be able to do that. And he's certainly one of those for sure.
Yep. Agreed 100%.
You mentioned Ben Roethlisberger, so let's talk about that real quick. And, these are things obviously in the offseason we'll be able to reflect more on that. But he of course, announced his retirement as well. Everyone saw it coming. He released the video, and calling it quits after 18 seasons in the league. Dude's got a lot of wins. He's top 10 all time in almost, every category. 5th most passing yards. 5th most completions, just all of that stuff. He's got the 2 Super Bowl wins, 1 Super Bowl loss, a lot of playoff wins in there too. 92 wins at Heinz Field, which is the second most at a single venue. It's, he's got a lot of stuff to it. he does. He feels like one of those guys, Mark. And I know it could be homerish, so I'm interested to see what your take on it is. But I do feel like throughout his career, he never got the credit he deserved for the things he did. Whether it be, it's always the Steelers develop great wide receivers, and that's partly true. But like, how does he not get credit for what AB became, or what Mike Wallace was, or even, Hines Ward, the last, 6 years of his career. It's just, he was so good and did it so uniquely that I think his legacy has staying power that maybe some other quarterbacks, like a Drew Brees, for instance, may not have as much because of how he played the game. I mean, he had a couple signature things in his career. Drew Brees' signature thing was accuracy, but that's kind of general. Ben's signature was a pump fake. He had the greatest pump fake of all time. And, his unique ability to extend plays using his size and shrugging people off, not much his elusiveness. Your thoughts on his legacy and kind of where he'll fit and stand the test of time, I guess, in that regard.
Well, where he'll fit is in Canton, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. To me, I compare him. He's a lot like, to me, he's like the Brian Urlacher of like middle linebackers, where Urlacher is one of those people where you say to yourself, man, when he was in his prime, there's not many people who could really do what he did. But overall, did he do enough consistently to say he's the greatest of all time? No, he didn't. And I love Urlacher to death. As a Bears fan, he's to me the greatest Bear of my lifetime in watching football, and being a Bears fan. Not having to seen Walter Payton and all and people like that. He's very, very similar, like physically beyond gifted. You didn't see a linebacker who was 6'5", who could run like he did, like a safety, and then Ben was the same way. Big quarterbacks were immobile. Ben was supremely mobile early in his career. But you also have to give Big Ben a ton of credit. I know he didn't win the big games for the last decade of his career. He wasn't even really in many of the big games for the last decade of his career. He wasn't in an AFC Championship game for a lot of those years. But he was surrounded by in the last 10 years of his career, you're dealing with the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady. You're dealing with the second greatest quarterback of all time in Peyton Manning. You have young up-and-coming quarterbacks, Andrew Luck, and then a Patrick Mahomes. There was a lot to deal with. He had to deal with the dysfunction of his own organization and players, like an AB, a Le'Veon Bell. He had a defensive coach, a great defensive coach, a Hall of Fame coach. But not, wasn't constantly surrounded by, new innovative offensive things. Ben Roethlisberger's signature plays also involved accuracy. That throw to Santonio Holmes to win the Super Bowl,
sure,
that is one of the most impressive throws you will ever see in a highlight reel. So to me, he's the Brian Urlacher of quarterbacks, a Hall of Famer, no doubt. Surefire. Just the epitome of a great player for one team, for an iconic franchise, and played the game at times at the highest level of his career. But also during his time, you'd argue he was always like the second best or maybe the third best, in his prime. And, he had the 1 year where it's like, dude, he's the best. Urlacher broke through Defensive Player of the Year in 06, led to them. The reason the Bears made that Super Bowl run in 06 was Brian Urlacher in his prime, just being absolutely incredible. The Bears are who we thought they were because of that. And I don't mean to be ranting on Urlacher, but that's my way to equate it to Ben Roethlisberger. Yeah, the last part of his career, kind of a disappointment, but he still put up insane numbers. He transitioned in an NFL from being a guy who was hand the ball off, play defense, to being a guy who threw for 5,000 yards over and over and over again, and 30-plus touchdowns over and over and over again. He is an incredible talent. I don't think he's a top 10 quarterback of all time, but if someone wanted to make the argument that he is a fringe 10 and if he was in your like 9-10 range, I don't know if I'd argue, because I do think Big Ben would succeed in the previous NFL where it was way more physical, but I don't know if Big Ben could succeed in the NFL, prime Big Ben, 15, 20, 30 years from now. I don't know what that looks like and how the game is evolving. because he wasn't as mental of a player. He didn't treat his body as well. He had things that for overall didn't make him the GOAT of GOATs or in that conversation, but he's an all-time great player.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're pretty in line on that. And, we'll go over a lot of these players' legacies later on this offseason and kind of, dig a little deeper into the weeds of these. But yeah, no, I think, highlight reels are something I thoroughly enjoy watching. I mean, I'll do that all the time. And I've always said, I don't think anyone has as amazing of a highlight reel overall than Troy Polamalu. He's always been, to me, the greatest highlight reel ever. Walter Payton has been right there too.
Barry.
But man, Big Ben's, I mean, I was looking at, I was just, watching a lot of stuff, and man, some of the plays he made, it's just, it is incredible. So yeah, it's cool to look back, and looks a lot different than what he looked like in 2019 to today. But
agreed.
We got some hirings to go over here. Just a few NFL head coaches, new NFL head coaches to join the league. We know that Josh McDaniels is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders' next head coach, and they just recently locked up Ziegler. I'm forgetting his first name, so I need to find that real as their general manager. But I didn't realize that McDaniels was really going to be one of those candidates coming into this circle, just because he has been over the years mark. And in the last, 5 or so years, he hasn't bit on really any of them outside of the Indianapolis one that was, we thought he was going to, be their next coach. But other than that, it's been pretty quiet, and it seemed like maybe he was just going to be the successor to Bill Belichick. But instead, now, I mean, this is a pretty good spot for him to be in. He comes back to the AFC West for one.
Yep.
Didn't have success in Denver. Didn't have a quarterback, though, really, in Denver. So he gets Derek Carr. We all think he's a definitely above average quarterback, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and a team that's ascending. So, I mean, what were your initial reactions hearing the news that Josh McDaniels is heading over to Las Vegas?
Two main thoughts, and I'll throw it back to you. First was this was, again, an investment from the Raiders and saying Derek Carr's our guy, and we're going to get a Derek Carr deal done, and we're not going to entertain the idea. Because a lot of people, we floated out there, could the organization just kind of move on from him? His contract's up. What do you do? How much do you pay him? And I think if you're Derek Carr, now becomes the time of, okay, what do you ask for versus, you are the savior of that franchise. You deserve money, but you already got paid really well. And now is it about winning? And if Derek Carr can take less and get on another just like $25 to $28 million deal a year range, I mean, that's incredible value for Derek Carr. Like we talked about kind of with Ryan Tannehill, but I think we all agree he's got a higher ceiling than Tannehill. And I think he's got to be ecstatic about Josh McDaniels coming over. I really do. But for McDaniels, listen, Vegas is attractive. There's no state tax in Nevada. You have that beautiful stadium. It's a free agent destination. And really, you're in a conference now, a division that is all just about, all right, can you score with Herbert? Can you score with Mahomes? And it's going to be fun to watch. And I'd say the other thing that I thought about, and maybe this is reading too much into the tea leaves, is this Josh McDaniels after a year of Mac Jones going, listen, that's the juice I can squeeze out of that orange. And I don't want to be blamed for when defenses now figure out this is all we can do with this kid and we don't elevate it. And this isn't my choice. I didn't draft him. I want out. So we'll see. It's going to be really interesting. All the people are very high on Mac Jones, and deservedly so. He had the best rookie season by far of any of the rookies. But now it's Mac Jones learning a new offensive system in year 2. So it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, and so it was Dave Ziegler or Ziegler. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but the Patriots executive as well that they're able to bring along as their general manager. So it's interesting because we talked about how general managers, typically you hire them, they're going to be making the hire. This one seemed to be, whether it's Mark Davis or who else in the Raiders organization that was like, we want Josh McDaniels. Now who's a GM that will get on board with Josh McDaniels?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be the guy in New England that's been with him. So it seems like they're bringing in a pairing. that at least has working knowledge together. And, that seems to be a good thing, at least for the start. But it's kind of a wait and see approach with McDaniels, right? For us, because we haven't seen him do it as a head coach, really. So we'll wait and see
Besides
kind of
Tim
how he's
Tebow,
able
save
to.
his butt.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, it's almost like we give him a mulligan for that one. We'll kind of, now if you can't find success with Derek Carr, a team that almost made the playoffs this year despite so much adversity.
Well, they made the playoffs and lost to the Bengals.
I'm sorry. Yeah, of course. Yeah, they made the playoffs. They almost didn't, but made the playoffs in that 7th seed, 6th seed to overcome all of what happened. So yeah, impressive stuff there. And we'll see if they're able to kind of build on that momentum. So moving on to the New York Giants, who got themselves Mr. Brian Daboll. Obviously, he was a hot button item this, I guess you can't really say this offseason, but the past, 3 weeks, done a lot of interviews for the job. I know he was a big candidate, someone that was on your radar for the Bears job.
Yep.
But here he goes with Mark Mara so in New York, he's staying in state kind of, and I know they play in New Jersey, staying in state, inherits Daniel Jones. I'm interested to see kind of what happens with this, because if they were tied to Daniel Jones, I'm not sure I see Fowler or Daboll being interested as much in this job. So I'm wondering if they're giving him the leeway to say, like, let's see how he works for a year, but then we'll kind of let you go off of it. Or if they were like, hey, Daniel Jones is our guy and we're bringing you in to fix him. What do you think kind of played out in that scenario?
I think it's that Daboll had assurances that, listen, you don't have to make Daniel Jones into anything. I think the New York Giants are going to be extraordinarily aggressive this offseason. I think you're going to see them throw multiple picks. They have multiple first-round picks. I think you're going to see them throw the woodshed at Seattle, try and lure Russell Wilson away. I think you're going to see them be aggressive, maybe even with Aaron Rodgers. I think you're going to see them get extraordinarily aggressive in the whatever veteran quarterback market is out there. And I think then you'll see them say, listen, if it doesn't work, let's use our 2 first-round draft picks on really good players, because we're a team that just needs good players, and we'll go after a quarterback again next year. If all of a sudden miracles happen and Danny Dimes becomes incredible under Daboll's system, we'll see. I don't know, but I don't think Daboll would have taken the job if it was, hey, you're coming in here to fix Danny Dimes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And, they brought Joe Shane in to be their, new GM as well. That seemed, throughout the league, I'd never heard of the guy. So I don't know much about him. I can't really give much thoughts on that hire. But from what a lot of people are talking about throughout the league, he was the assistant GM for the Bills the past 4 years. We've obviously seen the draft classes they've been able to put together. That at least resume bodes well for the New York Giants. It's a big market. I think Daboll kind of fits that a little bit. So yeah, I'm excited to see how it works. I think already we can tell it feels more. I don't want to use this disparagingly, but it feels a lot more professional than the Joe Judge and the Gettleman regime. I don't know, that's just kind of how it feels to me. It feels more right, And
if you're Daboll, you feel to yourself, this is the easiest division maybe to come in and make a mark in. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I have a feeling. I have a feeling it's not the Daboll. I have a feeling that Daboll met with Chicago under courtesy, but said, "I don't want the job." You know what I mean? I think there's things that came up with him and other jobs as well, because he was kind of the guy that he met with Minnesota, he met with everyone, and if New York must have had the best pitch, and maybe it's just staying closer to home and maybe not wanting to necessarily move all the family right now. Maybe that played into it, but I think if you're New York, probably offered the sweetest deal. They got the draft picks, and maybe they gave him some assurances about something. But I like the hire for the Giants because I think he's going to be a winning head football coach.
Yeah, the couple big hires there for John Mara. I said Mark Mara, John Mara of the New York Giants. Let's go to the Denver Broncos. Nathaniel Hackett. They end up getting the offensive coordinator from the Packers. It seems like a good move. Obviously, moving off of Vic Fangio, heavy defensive mind, to heavy offensive mind. Someone that's who put together some really good offenses with Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur in Green Bay, and now he kind of gets the keys, and they're telling him, this is your ship here. So interested to see what happens. Obviously, with Denver, their biggest thing has been the quarterback. So I'm not sure how much success we can forecast for Hackett early on with Drew Lock at the helm. But if Hackett has a good working relationship with Aaron Rodgers, perhaps this is a hire that they said, this is going to help us get Aaron Rodgers. Who knows? But I think that's going to be the biggest tell is what are they going to be able to do at quarterback? But hey, I think it's interesting. And they got a guy that is innovative, young, and has a good offensive mind. So I think they're going in the right direction with this hire.
Yeah, I think so as well. They see the writing on the wall in their own. Again, you have to look at your own division. We need to be able to score. We need to be better offensively, and so hopefully they can. This hire with Hackett can help them get to that level. But again, if you're Hackett, you don't necessarily have the hottest name as Daboll. You maybe don't have the demands they did, but I'd be very interested to hear what they told him as far as this is what we're thinking with the quarterback position. Because again, I could see them being very aggressive, wanting to throw the sink at certain things. And but I also could see them saying, listen, we're not going to judge you after a year. If we just have to piece this together for a year and then go to the draft or do whatever, wait for another year for Aaron to become available, we'll give you those assurances as well. So we'll see. Excited for the Broncos, because it kind of, if you're a Broncos fan, you have been frustrated by offense the last, since Peyton Manning left and you won that Super Bowl. So this is at least you saying, all right, we're investing in offense, and that's got to feel exciting if you're a fan.
The Chicago Bears, they got someone from Green Bay as well. They got the quarterbacks coach, Getsy. But the bigger news, obviously, is they replaced Ryan and Matt with Ryan and Matt, and Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus of the Indianapolis Colts, their defensive coordinator. Yeah. And I'll give you the floor, man. I know we've talked about these candidates before, but maybe start with Poles. Like, what were your thoughts on him, and then ultimately him deciding on Eberflus over some of those other candidates? Like, we knew Dan Quinn was a top option as well.
Well, what I love about Poles, and I think it was a good hire, is the fact that he is a guy that has spent literally now almost 13 years with the one organization, seeing how it's run from bad GMs to good GMs, and he worked his way up in an organization. So think about how many, there was the John Dorsey era with the Chiefs, and that changes it. And the Chiefs, had some struggle years before the Alex Smith years and the Patrick Mahomes years, but he was a part of that. By the time they were drafting Patrick Mahomes, he was one of the heads of player personnel and scouting. He's also a former very good college offensive lineman, played for Boston College with Matt Ryan, and actually had a cup of coffee in the league. The Bears signed him as an undrafted free agent. So I kind of like that, a little bit of story to that. But what I love about this hire versus the Ryan Pace and these eras, what has the Bears' problem been? Is you keep having guys like your owner, George McCaskey, saying, and Ted Phillips saying, we're not football guys. We're business guys and we're fans. So you hire a guy who's a football guy. He played the game at the highest level, even if it was just for a cup of coffee, and he scouted the game, and he's been scouting the game and players for 13 years with a really solid organization. So that's exciting. And he is an offensive lineman. We've been frustrated with years for Pace about his inability to just commit to drafting and fixing the offensive line. And he is a guy that comes from a scouting background, taking guys from college and finding nuggets and developing them and putting them in a system. Ryan Pace focused way too much on throw money at Jimmy Graham, or, you know what I mean? And make bad decisions of throwing money at Foles and Andy Dalton.
Cohen,
this is a guy who's going to look consistently towards the draft and value the draft and value scouting. And understanding that, hey, I'm an offensive lineman. I'm going to value the offensive line. So I love that. What I didn't love about how then quickly Eberflus was hired, I wish that Poles would have gotten to just go through all of the candidates. to talk to Brian Dable, to talk to Flores, some of the other big name coaches that we were excited about. But what that leads me to believe is that when Poles was hired and the organization was honest with Poles, saying, listen, either we really, really, really absolutely X these guys off for this reason and these reasons alone, or they knew from inside sources saying, listen, they told us thanks, but no thanks, no matter who you hire as a GM. So when it came down to it, Poles looked at the top 3 candidates that were interested in the job and that the Bears were interested in Caldwell, Quinn, and Eberflus. And of those, Eberflus and Caldwell, I liked a lot more than Dan Quinn. I was been not sold on Dan Quinn, mainly because Quinn is a retread of a defensive guy who seems to just thrive at the coordinator position where he can turn his hat backwards and not have to deal with the media, not have to deal with the offensive issues. Think about how many bad offensive coordinators they hired in Atlanta after, running through that bad 28-3 loss. That Dan Quinn lost control of that organization. And that, to me, I know you can learn things from that, but when you're a Bears organization that needs a positive, stable voice and needs someone to come in there and lead, I just never trusted Dan Quinn from that on. And he may go somewhere and eventually be great. And he may make me look like an idiot, but I never had the faith in that. Jim Caldwell did it. He took the Lions through the playoffs twice. And Matt Stafford and that Lions organization loved having him. He was a solid voice. He's offensive Lovie Smith. He is solid. He's smart. He's buttoned up. He's an adult in the room who you would respect. So I could have done that. I could have gotten behind that. Eberflus, what I didn't love about him in last week, but I'm now convincing myself more of, is the fact that, he's a little bit unknown, and he's been with Indy for not a short time, since 2018, and this is the first cycle that his name's come up. So why not last year? Why not the year before when their defenses were good the past couple years? What took so long for him to become a hot name? And maybe it's just the way the NFL works. You want to give a guy a couple years to earn it. But he's 51. He's relatively young. He played college football at the highest level at Toledo. He immediately got into coaching from there. And he's been a part of really good winning and where he's been as far as improving teams. I like the idea that he's coming in is going to go to a 4-3 because I think Quinn and Mack at their ages and their careers, just rushing the passer and not having to worry about dropping back in coverage is exactly what they need. I think that they are going to look to, hopefully the new regime looks to prioritize getting Hicks to retire as a Bear on a team-friendly deal. We're repairing the relationship with Allen Robinson. I think Roquan Smith will thrive in the modern 4-3, even though he's a little undersized compared to Darius Leonard. So I like all of that. I really, really do. I'm excited for it. But overall, I've come to terms with, and Getsy, I'm excited about because you have a feeling he'll be given the keys, and he comes from the Shanahan McVay tree. And if that means I'm going to watch a Bears team next year that prioritizes great defense and unique running schemes with their really good running backs, sign me up. I'll put my name on the dotted line for that. But again, I have come to the realization with this Bears organization is that they are flawed from the top. And I don't know if this regime is going to be able to do like what any other regime before them couldn't do since the 1985 Bears, which is overcome dysfunction at the top of the organization and prove that they can produce a consistent winning football team. All I want from my Chicago Bears is for them to be like, dude, that Bears offense is so good, you got to go hire Matt Getsy or whatever his name is, someone so Getsy. Like, that's what I want. I want that to be my problem. I want it to be like, got to find a new old coordinator because that Bears offense was so good. That is a phrase we have never said in the history of the Chicago Bears organization. So I want that to happen. And Adam Gase got the job because the Bears offense was good. And he was a disaster. So I want that to be the problem for the Chicago Bears. If it is, we'll see. We'll address that problem when it gets to that. But I need a culture, and I need a coach that will talk to their players, return their Zoom calls. Apparently, Matt Nagy wasn't doing that. So And I like that the leader of my ship is a football guy, not a numbers, and organizational guy. Because it seems as though Ryan Poles, he's a big dude. You don't mess with him. He's young. And hopefully he'll look at George in the eye and say, hey, George, remember how you continually say you're not a football guy? I'm a football guy. Let me do my job.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for. But I agree. Pivoting to that type of regime might be the way to go. So, yeah, it's a wait-and-see approach. Obviously, we'll see kind of what they're able to do with this draft. But so far, shaping up to have a staff put together that so far, has certainly some positives there. Finally, Mark, as we close out the show, Sean Payton, surprisingly, called it quits. I mean, what was your initial reaction? It certainly took me off guard. I did not anticipate it, but now looking back on it, I think a lot of it makes sense, actually. I
completely agree. It was caught off guard, but it makes sense. And anyone who wants to be mad at Sean Payton for doing this, listen, the New Orleans Saints were a dumpster fire of a franchise for the whole existence until Sean Payton and Drew Brees showed up. They gave you 16 incredible years where you were a part of a winning organization, an organization that had some controversies, an organization, though, that had a Super Bowl victory and were always there in the playoffs and contending for an NFC Championship. And he now has a right, I think, to say, I need a change of scenery. Listen, we went all in the past couple of years with me and Drew Brees. Drew's gone. I can't do this now on my own. You need to reset. Let's reset. Good luck to you. And I think he'll take a year, maybe 2 off. He'll wait for the Cowboys job to open. He'll do something like that. He'll pick his next job. He'll be back in the NFL. And you know what? Saints fans, I don't think they should get mad at him for doing it because they're leaving him when he's down. But the Saints need a reset. Let him reset, purge the organization, purge the contracts, get out of cap hell, get out of Michael Thomas and his whininess and say, we're going to reset. We had a great run on our own, kind of very mirroring the Steelers and the AFC version of the Steelers in a lot of ways. Didn't win maybe as much as you thought they should. And now Tomlin's in this weird spot, kind of like, he's going to get his chance to see the organization through it. But I think Peyton has every right to say, I don't need to be a part of this. We went all in on me and Breeze isn't here, and now I'm not here.
I hope to see him in the booth sooner rather than later, because I think he'll be a gem as an analyst or, in some capacity for sure. So that would be really exciting to see what he does. And, he left the door open for coaching in the future. He may very well come back, sooner rather than later in that respect. But that should do it for this episode. I'm really excited as we get ready for the Super Bowl preview. And go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to let's give our audience a little teaser. I feel comfortable saying this right now today. What is your just quick gut feeling on the Super Bowl 56? Take a minute or two. I'll take a minute or two. Gut feeling.
My gut feeling is the Rams are going to win it. I think that defensive line is going to overpower the Bengals offensive front. And, when they could have maybe overcome some of those things in the past with deep shots to Jamar Chase, I just think the Ramsey-Chase matchup that we're likely to see, even if it's 50-50, they're going to need, Chase to win, 80-20 for it to balance out what I think is going to be a pressure-packed evening or afternoon for Joe Burrow and company, not unlike the Titans game just a couple weeks ago. So that's my initial thought on it. But I don't think it's going to be an absolute onslaught either. I mean, I could see it being, 30-20, 30-21, something like that. But I do think the Rams, also having been there in recent years, I think Sean McVay might bring a little bit more preparation into this game, anticipating kind of what to expect from the moment, and them being in their home stadium and being in LA, being already in an atmosphere where you're surrounded by media constantly. I don't think they'll get caught up in any of it. So those are my initial thoughts on that.
Zach Taylor of the Sean McVay tree. Remember a couple of years ago, all those guys got hired who just had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay. I will say this. I completely agree. My initial gut feeling is, man, oh man, Aaron Donald, if you could find a good odds on him to be the Super Bowl MVP, I think he is one of those guys that is so like, I got back here. I'm not letting this chance to like, he honestly could win the Super Bowl MVP. Like, he's that special of a player. Von Miller, the same way, is a guy that, you know, his numbers are Hall of Fame worthy or close to it. But if he can go out with another, he was the Super Bowl MVP when they won. So if he can go out with another like 2-sack Super Bowl performance, and win another ring, like it's a big legacy game for all those guys. But I do think what will keep this game really close, and we'll expand on this next week, is the pressure is on the Rams. And I mean, they're the team that I worry about getting tight, and they're the team that I worry about the lights and everything just feeling that like that extra drip of sweat versus this fucking Bengals team, man. They're out at bars. They're out saying, no chance we should be here right now. Whatever happens. Let's go win this bleeping thing. And I think that is an attitude that over the next 2 weeks will really serve them well. Right now, my gut says Rams. We'll see how we feel in a week from now.
Definitely. Things can change. So I'm excited for that. We'll have a lot to talk about and kind of get into the nitty gritty of this matchup that is
legacy
away, less than 2 weeks away.
Legacy. Oh, yeah. We're talking legacies next week.
That's right. Will Matt Stafford get his first ever ring in his borderline Hall of Fame career? And will Joe Burrow be the next Mahomes when none of us expected it to happen this quickly? Impressive stuff and a lot of storylines to go through as well. Stay safe as always, everyone. You can always hit us up on Twitter, Facebook for all of that good stuff, whether or not you want to interact with your picks as well. But we'll be on there monitoring stuff as the week continues. And we'll see you back here next Monday.